the silent watcher. Every night, the silence of my room is broken by a presence. As the moon casts its pale light through the window, I feel it before I see it, a figure, dark and indistinct, standing at the foot of my bed. I close my eyes, hoping it's a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination. But each time I blink, it draws nearer, its form becoming clearer, and the air grows colder. I've tried to speak to it, to ask what it wants, but my words seem to fall on deaf ears. It just stands there, watching, waiting. The first time it happened, I thought it was a nightmare. But as the nights went on, the figure became a constant in my life, its presence more oppressive each time. The whispers started softly, unintelligible murmurs that I could barely hear. But they grew louder, more insistent, as if the figure was trying to communicate something urgent, something vital. I strain to understand, but the language is foreign, a series of hisses and sighs that make my skin crawl. One night, I gather the courage to reach out, my hand trembling as it moves through the space between us. To my horror, I feel nothing but the icy chill of the void. It's then that I realize this entity is not of this world, it's something else, something other. The days begin to blur together, each sunset bringing a sense of dread. I can't sleep, can't eat, can't think straight. My friends say I look drained, haunted. They don't know how right they are. I'm being haunted by something that won't let me go, that follows me into my dreams. As I sit up in bed, the figure looms over me, its face shrouded in shadow. I can feel its breath, cold and damp, as it leans in close. The whispers become clearer now, forming words I wish I could forget. Soon, it hisses, soon you will understand. I wake up screaming, the echo of the words soon ringing in my ears. It's a warning, a premonition of something terrible on the horizon. I know I can't ignore it any longer. I have to find out what this figure wants, why it's chosen me. But as I steel myself for the coming night, I can't shake the feeling that I might not like the answer. The days blur into a relentless cycle of fear and exhaustion. Each night, I lie in bed, my eyes wide open, waiting for the figure to appear. It's always the same, a shadowy silhouette, its form shifting like smoke. The whispers have become more coherent, a language that scrapes against my sanity. But still, I can't comprehend its message. I've tried researching ancient texts, seeking answers in forgotten rituals. The internet offers nothing but vague superstitions and ghost stories. My friends think I'm losing my mind, but I know better. This is real. The figure is real. And it wants something from me. One evening, as the moon hangs low in the sky, I decide to confront it. Armed with a flashlight and trembling resolve, I sit up and wait. The room grows colder, the air thick with anticipation. And then it appears, the silent watcher, as I've come to call it. Its eyes, two pinpricks of malevolence, lock onto mine. I raise the flashlight, illuminating its face. Hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, and a mouth that stretches impossibly wide. It's not human. It's something older, darker. Why? I manage to whisper. Why are you here? The figure tilts its head, its voice a spectral echo. To warn you, it says. The veil is thinning. Reality frays at the edges. Soon, they will cross over. Who? I demand. What do you mean? It leans closer, its breath icy against my skin. The forgotten ones, it murmurs. The ones who hunger. They feed on fear, on doubt. And you, dear mortal, are their gateway. I shudder. The room seems to close in, the walls pressing against me. How do I stop it? You can't, it replies. But you can delay it. The whispers, they hold the key. Listen. Decode. Unravel their secrets. And then it's gone, fading into the darkness. I'm left alone, trembling, with a newfound purpose. The whispers, the unintelligible language, they're my only hope. I record them, play them backward, dissect their syllables. But the more I listen, the more I realize, they're not just words. They're memories, fragments of forgotten lives. As the nights pass, I piece together their meaning. The silent watcher was once like me, a curious soul who stumbled upon forbidden knowledge. And now, it's trapped, a sentinel between worlds. Its whispers are a plea for release, a desperate cry for salvation. But salvation comes at a cost. The Forgotten Ones hunger for a vessel, a conduit. And on the unwitting bridge, every blink, every heartbeat, they draw closer. I see them now, flickering at the edge of my vision, their eyes hungry, their forms shifting. I've reached the heart of the mystery, but I'm no closer to understanding. What secrets lie within these whispers? What horrors await when the veil finally tears? And most importantly, how do I survive the night? The whispers have become my obsession. I've transcribed them, analyzed them, even played them backward in the dead of night. But their meaning eludes me, slipping through my fingers like smoke. The silent watcher's warning echoes in my mind. Decode. Unravel. Delay. I've barricaded my room, drawn salt circles, and burned sage. Anything to keep the Forgotten Ones at bay. But they're relentless. Their eyes, hunger incarnate, follow me wherever I go. They're not bound by walls or doors. They slip through the cracks, their forms flickering like dying flames. My sanity phrase. Sleep is a distant memory. Every blink brings them closer. I've tried to tell my friends, but they dismiss it as stress, lack of rest. They don't see the shadows that cling to my skin, the way the air thickens when they draw near. The whispers have changed. They're no longer random syllables. They tell a story, a fragmented tale of betrayal, sacrifice, and a forbidden pact. I piece together the fragments, desperate for answers. The silent watcher watches, its eyes hollow, its mouth a silent scream. I've traced the whispers to an old library, its shelves sagging under forgotten tomes. The librarian, a wizened woman with rheumy eyes, guides me to a dusty corner. The veil chronicles, she says. Forbidden knowledge. Read at your own peril. The pages smell of decay. The ink blurs, dances. I read about the Forgotten Ones, their hunger, their thirst for mortal vessels. They were once gods, banished for their cruelty. Now they hunger for redemption, a way back into our world. The ritual is clear. A sacrifice, a willing vessel. The whispers, their instructions, a map to their prison. Decode. Unravel. Delay. But delay for what? Redemption or damnation? I return home, trembling. The silent watcher awaits, its form more defined, its eyes pleading. Decode, it whispers. Save me. I close my eyes, listen to the whispers anew. The language shifts, becomes familiar. It's not ancient. It's mine, a reflection of my deepest fears, my darkest desires. The Forgotten Ones hunger for release. They hunger for me. I'm their vessel, their gateway. But redemption lies in sacrifice. I know what I must do. Tonight, I'll stand at the edge of the abyss. I'll speak the words, unravel the veil. The Forgotten Ones will cross over, and I'll be free, or consumed. And so, I wait. The room grows colder. The whispers rise, a crescendo of longing. The silent watcher nods, its eyes filled with gratitude. As I close my eyes, I see them, the Forgotten Ones, their forms shifting, their hunger insatiable. And I wonder, will redemption taste like salvation or despair? The veil trembles. The hour approaches. And I, the unwitting bridge, prepare to step into the abyss. Story 2. Don't trust the shadows. I always believed that the dead had a way of reaching out to the living, a whisper through the veil that separates our worlds. But nothing prepared me for the day I received a letter, postmarked and dated for today, in my deceased grandmother's handwriting. The message was cryptic: do not trust the shadows in your house, for they weave the darkness of another realm. The house, a Victorian relic passed down through generations, always had an eerie feel, with its creaking floors and drafty halls. But it was the shadows that felt alive, shifting and twisting in ways that defied the natural play of light. I tried to dismiss the letter as a cruel joke, but the signature at the bottom was undeniably hers, the same flourish I had seen on countless birthday cards and letters from my childhood. That night, the shadows seemed to press closer, and I could swear I heard whispers emanating from them, voices that were neither male nor female, speaking a language I felt I once knew. I stayed up, clutching the letter, trying to decipher its meaning. The shadows danced at the edge of my vision, and I felt a chill that didn't come from the night air. The following days were a blur of research and restless nights. I pored over old family albums, diaries, anything that could give me a clue. It was in a tattered journal of my grandmother's that I found mention of a family curse, tied to an ancient entity that lived in the shadows, feeding off the fears of the living. I decided to confront the shadows. Armed with salt and iron, I waited for nightfall. The house groaned as darkness enveloped it, and the shadows grew bold. They crept along the walls, stretching towards me with tendrils of darkness. I stood my ground, reciting incantations I had found in the journal, but the shadows only laughed, a sound like the rustling of dead leaves. As I reached the climax of the ritual, the shadows recoiled, and for a moment, I thought I had banished them. But then, they surged forward, and I felt a cold hand grip my heart. The room spun, and I fell to the floor, the letter fluttering out of my grasp. When I awoke, it was to a house bathed in sunlight. The shadows retreated to their corners. But the fear remained, a constant companion. I knew then that this was only the beginning, that the shadows would return with the night. And with each passing day, they grew more daring, more tangible, until I could almost make out figures within their dark embrace. The days blurred into nights, and I became a prisoner in my own home. The shadows grew bolder, their movements more deliberate. They whispered secrets, half-formed sentences that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to ignore them, but their presence gnawed at my sanity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I ventured into the attic, the heart of the house's darkness. The air was thick with dust, and the light from my lantern barely penetrated the gloom. The shadows clung to the eaves, twisting like smoke. I felt eyes upon me, unseen but watching. In a forgotten corner, I found an old wooden chest. Its hinges groaned as I opened it, revealing yellowed letters, dried flowers, and a tarnished silver locket. The locket held a sepia-tone photograph, a woman with eyes like midnight, her face etched with sorrow. My grandmother. I traced the contours of her face, wondering what secrets she had carried. The shadows gathered around me, their whispers growing louder. She made a pact, they hissed. A bargain with the darkness. I clutched the locket, my breath ragged. The shadows swirled, forming shapes, a twisted tree, a moonless sky, and a figure with elongated limbs. The entity from the journal, the one that fed on fear. Why? I demanded, my voice echoing in the attic. Why did she make this pact? The shadows converged, their edges sharp as razors. To protect her bloodline, they murmured. To keep the darkness at bay. But at what cost? I whispered. The shadows laughed, a chorus of voices. The firstborn, they said. The price was the firstborn child of each generation. My heart pounded. I was the firstborn. The shadows hungered for me. As I descended the attic stairs, the house seemed to breathe, a living entity with secrets woven into its walls. The letter lay on the kitchen table, its ink bleeding into the paper. You have one night, it read. One night to break the curse. I stared at the shadows dancing on the walls. They knew my fear, tasted it like wine. But I had to confront them, find the truth buried in their depths. The locket hung heavy around my neck, a talisman against the darkness. And so, as the clock struck midnight, I stepped into the heart of the house, the basement. The shadows swirled, their voices rising to a crescendo. I closed my eyes, whispered the incantation, and waited for the darkness to consume me. The basement was a cavern of forgotten memories, its walls damp and pulsing with ancient secrets. I clutched the locket, its silver surface cold against my skin. The shadows gathered, their whispers a cacophony of dread. You seek answers, they murmured. But the truth is darker than you imagine. I stepped into the center of the room, the air thickening around me. The shadows swirled, revealing glimpses of otherworldly landscapes, a forest of twisted trees, a moonless sky where stars blinked like malevolent eyes. Why did my grandmother make the pact? I demanded, my voice echoing off the stone walls. The shadows converged, forming a figure, a woman with eyes like midnight. My grandmother. She stepped forward, her gaze unyielding. To protect our bloodline, she said. The darkness hungered for us, and so we struck a bargain. But the price was steep, the firstborn child of each generation. I clenched my fists. And what happens if I break the curse? The shadows laughed, a sound like the rustling of dead leaves. The entity will consume you, they whispered. Your fear, your essence, it will feed on you until nothing remains. I glanced at the locket, its weight a reminder of my duty. There must be another way. My grandmother's eyes softened. There is, she said. The veil between our worlds is thin. You must find the rift, the place where the shadows bleed into reality. There, you can confront the entity. I nodded, my resolve hardening. And if I fail? Then the curse will continue, my grandmother said. The shadows will claim you, child, and the cycle will repeat. I stepped toward the basement wall, tracing the cracks. The shadows surged, their voices urging me on. Find the rift, they whispered. Break the curse. And so, armed with the locket and the knowledge passed down through generations, I began my search. The house resisted, its walls shifting, doors leading to dead ends. But I persisted, driven by love and fear. Finally, in the attic, I found it, a tear in reality, a shimmering veil that pulsed with malevolence. The shadows gathered, their forms elongated, hungry. I stepped through, my heart pounding. On the other side, I faced the entity, a creature of smoke and nightmares. Its eyes bore into mine, and I felt my fear rise like a tide. But I remembered my grandmother's sacrifice, her love for our bloodline. I break the curse, I said, my voice steady. I free my bloodline from this darkness. The entity laughed, a sound that echoed through the void. You cannot escape your fate, it whispered. The shadows are eternal. But I held up the locket, its silver surface blazing. Love is stronger than fear, I said. And I choose love. The entity recoiled, its form unraveling. You fool, it hissed. The shadows will find another way. And then, with a final surge of darkness, it vanished, leaving me standing in the attic, the veil sealed behind me. But as I descended the stairs, I felt a presence, a whisper in the shadows. My child, unborn but waiting. The curse was broken, but the darkness would never truly leave. And so, I vowed to protect my bloodline, to keep the shadows at bay. For love was my weapon, and fear my shield. Story 3. The uninvited figure. Every night, the ritual was the same. I'd lock my bedroom door, a quaint old brass key turning in a lock that creaked with age. The comforting click was supposed to keep the world out, to keep me safe. But it never did. Each night, I'd wake to find the door ajar, an inky blackness filling the space beyond. And there, in the void, stood a figure, a silent sentinel whose gaze I could feel but never see. The first time it happened, I told myself it was a dream. The second, a trick of the light. But as the nights wore on, the presence became undeniable. It never moved, never spoke, just watched. I began to dread sleep, the twilight hours where the world blurred and my watcher would appear. I sought help, of course. Friends stayed over, but they saw nothing. A locksmith changed the locks, yet still, the door would open. Even a priest blessed my room, his holy water shimmering in the air before settling on the old wooden floor. But that night, like all others, I woke to the open door. The figure began to invade my waking world. I'd see it out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement and reflections, a silhouette in the crowd. It was always just out of focus, a smudge on the lens of my life. My days grew long and weary, my nights a parade of terrors. I decided to confront it. One night, armed with nothing but a desperate courage, I stayed awake. The clock ticked loudly, each second a drumbeat to my impending encounter. Midnight came and went, and then, as the moon reached its zenith, the door creaked open. It stood there, as always, a figure cloaked in shadows. I stepped forward, my heart a hammer in my chest. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice a whisper lost in the vastness of the night. There was no answer, just the sense of something ancient and endless watching me from the dark. I reached out, my hand trembling, and as my fingers brushed the void where it stood, the figure remained elusive, a phantom that defied explanation. I researched ancient texts, delving into forgotten rituals and whispered legends. The Watcher, they called it, a guardian of thresholds, a sentinel between worlds. But why me? Why my room? I began to document my encounters, filling notebooks with sketches and desperate scribbles. The Watcher never moved, but its presence grew heavier, like a storm gathering on the horizon. I stopped inviting friends over, fearing they'd see the truth, that they'd glimpse the abyss beyond my door. Sleep became a battleground. I'd lie awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for the inevitable. The door would creak open, and there it would stand, framed by moonlight. Its eyes, if it had eyes, bore into mine, a hunger that chilled my soul. I tried to speak, to demand answers, but my voice always failed me. One night, I decided to confront it again. Armed with a flashlight and a borrowed camera, I sat in the darkness, waiting. The clock ticked, each second echoing like a heartbeat. At midnight, the door swung open, and the Watcher stepped into my room. I snapped a photo, the flash illuminating its form. But when I checked the camera, the image was blank, just an empty room. The Watcher had vanished, leaving only a lingering coldness in the air. I wept that night, my tears mixing with frustration and fear. The next morning, I developed the film. The photograph revealed nothing, just an empty room, as if the Watcher had never been there. But then I noticed a detail, the reflection in the mirror. My face, pale and wide-eyed, stared back at me. And behind me, in the darkness, a shadow, the Watcher. I couldn't escape it. It followed me to work, to the grocery store, even into my dreams. I'd wake, drenched in sweat, the door wide open, the Watcher standing over me. Its silence was maddening. What did it want? Why torment me? I researched more, desperate for answers. The Watcher was tied to ancient rites, a guardian of forbidden knowledge. Some said it was a harbinger of doom, a sign that the veil between worlds was thinning. But what did it want with me? And then, one night, it spoke. A whisper, barely audible, but it echoed through my mind. "Open the door," it said. "Cross the threshold." But I couldn't. Fear rooted me to the spot. The Watcher's form shifted, elongating, becoming something more, something monstrous. And as it reached for me, I woke, my room bathed in moonlight, the door wide open. The Watcher's whispers haunted my waking hours. "Open the door," it urged, its voice like a blade against my sanity. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The threshold called to me, a siren song that promised answers, or perhaps damnation. I studied the old key, its brass worn smooth by countless turns. It was more than a mundane lock, it was a gateway. The Watcher had chosen me, and now I had a choice. Fear clenched my gut, but curiosity drove me forward. The night was thick with anticipation. I stood before the door, the key heavy in my hand. The Watcher waited, its form shifting in the shadows. "Cross the threshold," it whispered, and I knew I had no other path. The key slid into the lock, and I turned it. The door swung open, revealing darkness beyond. I stepped over the threshold, my bare feet touching cold stone. The Watcher followed, its presence now corporeal, its eyes, yes, it had eyes, fixed on me. The room on the other side was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Walls of obsidian, etched with symbols older than time. A ceiling lost in shadows, and a floor that seemed to ripple like water. And at the center stood an ancient mirror, its surface reflecting not my own face, but something else, something monstrous. The Watcher gestured toward the mirror. "Look," it said, its voice echoing through the chamber. See the truth. I stepped closer, my breath fogging the glass. The reflection revealed a city, my city, but twisted, decayed. Buildings leaned like drunken sentinels, streets cracked and overgrown. And in the distance, a tower rose, its spire disappearing into the roiling clouds. What is this place? I asked, my voice barely audible. The Veil, the Watcher replied. A realm between worlds. You've glimpsed it every night, but now you stand within. Why? I demanded. Why torment me? The Watcher's eyes bore into mine. Because you're the key, it said. The one who can bridge the gap. The one who can set things right. But how? I whispered. Find the tower, the Watcher instructed. Climb to its peak. There, you'll find the truth, and a choice. What choice? To close the veil forever, the Watcher said, or to unleash what lies beyond. I hesitated, my mind a tempest of fear and wonder. The tower beckoned, its shadow stretching toward me. The Watcher stepped back, fading into the darkness. Choose wisely, it warned. For the veil hungers. And so, I stepped through the mirror, leaving my world behind. The tower awaited, its secrets hidden in its heights. The Watcher's final words echoed in my mind, the threshold is open. The choice is yours. And as I climbed, the veil whispered, promising salvation or damnation. The truth lay ahead, and I could only pray that my choice would save us all. Story 4. The Last Invitation. I always believed in the supernatural, but never did I think it would come knocking on my door, quite literally. It was a dreary Thursday evening when I found the envelope, no stamp, no postmark, just my name in cursive silver ink, Alex Mercer. Inside, a single card with the words, "You are cordially invited to the funeral of Alex Mercer." The date and time were today, now. My heart raced as I stood frozen, the cards slipping from my numb fingers. The room felt colder, the shadows in the corners of my living room seemed to stretch towards me. I could hear the faintest whisper, like someone calling out from a distance. Was this a sick joke? Or had I somehow slipped into an alternate reality where I was no longer among the living? I decided to confront this head-on. I grabbed my coat and keys, the invitation now tucked securely in my pocket. The address led me to an old chapel on the outskirts of town, one I'd never noticed before. Its Gothic spires pierced the foggy night sky, and as I approached, the large oak doors creaked open, as if expecting me. The chapel was dimly lit by candles that cast dancing shadows on the walls. I could see my breath in the air as I walked down the aisle, the echo of my footsteps my only companion. At the altar, a closed casket surrounded by white lilies, the scent overpowering. My name was on the plaque. Sitting in the pews were figures, shrouded in darkness, their faces obscured. I felt their eyes on me, heavy with sorrow and something else, accusation. I tried to speak, to demand answers, but my voice was swallowed by the silence of the chapel. As I reached out to touch the casket, a chill ran down my spine. The whispers grew louder, and I could make out words now. Why did you leave us, Alex? I spun around, but the figures were gone, leaving me alone with the casket and the creeping dread that something was terribly wrong. The chapel's air clung to my skin like damp cobwebs. I glanced back at the closed doors, but they were sealed shut. The whispers persisted, now louder, more insistent. Why did you leave us, Alex? They hissed, as if the very walls held their secrets. I approached the casket, my breath visible in the frigid air. The lilies seemed to sway, their petals brushing against the polished wood. My fingers trembled as I reached for the lid. The hinges groaned, and I half expected to find my own lifeless body inside. But there was nothing, only darkness. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a malevolent wind. I turned to face the pews, and there they were, the figures, still shrouded, still accusing. Their eyes bore into mine, and I felt their pain, their longing. Who were they? Why did they think I had abandoned them? Alex, a voice echoed from the shadows. I spun around, but no one stood there. Alex, it repeated, closer this time. I followed the sound, my heart pounding. It led me to a side door, cracked open just enough to reveal a narrow corridor. The whispers beckoned me forward. I stepped into the darkness, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The walls seemed to pulse, as if they held memories etched into their very fibers. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath forming misty tendrils. The corridor twisted and turned, leading deeper into the chapel's hidden recesses. And then I saw it, a flickering light at the end of the passage. I quickened my pace, drawn toward it like a moth to flame. The light emanated from a small room, its door ajar. Inside, an old mirror hung on the wall, its silvered surface tarnished with age. But it wasn't my reflection that stared back at me. Instead, I saw them, the figures from the pews. Their eyes were hollow, their faces etched with sorrow. They reached out, their ghostly hands pressing against the glass. "Alex," they whispered, their voices merging into one. "Help us." I stumbled back, my mind reeling. Who were they? What did they want from me? And why had I received an invitation to my own funeral? The mirrors seemed to ripple, distorting their forms. And then, as if in response to my unspoken question, the glass cracked, spiderweb fractures spreading outward. The room plunged into darkness, and the whispers grew louder, more desperate. "Help us, Alex," they pleaded. But how could I help ghosts? What unfinished business tied me to them? I had no answers, only fear gnawing at my insides. As I backed away from the broken mirror, the corridor shifted, elongating, twisting like a nightmare. The chapel itself seemed to breathe, inhaling my confusion and exhaling dread. And then, just as I reached the door, a single word echoed through the darkness: "Stay." The word "stay" echoed through the chapel, reverberating off the ancient stones. My heart pounded, and I hesitated at the door. What choice did I have? I was trapped in a nightmare, caught between the living and the dead. The figures in the mirror had become more than just ghosts, they were a part of me now, their sorrow etched into my very soul. I stepped back into the corridor, the walls closing in. The whispers followed, urging me forward. The chapel seemed to stretch, its dimensions warping. I stumbled, my breath ragged. The air tasted metallic, like blood. And then I saw it, a door, half hidden behind a tattered curtain. The room beyond was small, suffused with an otherworldly glow. In the center stood an ornate mirror, its frame adorned with twisted vines and thorns. The glass was pristine, untouched by time. I approached, my reflection wavering. But this time, it wasn't my face that stared back. The figures stood there, their eyes hollow, their forms translucent. They reached out, their fingers grazing the mirror's surface. "Alex," they whispered, their voices merging into a haunting chorus. "We need you." I clenched my fists, anger replacing fear. "What do you want from me?" I demanded. "Why am I here?" The mirror rippled, revealing scenes from my past. Memories flooded my mind, the accident, the guilt, the darkness that had consumed me. I had survived, but at what cost? The figures were my family, the ones I had lost. Their deaths haunted me, their faces etched into my nightmares. "You left us," my mother's voice echoed. "You survived, but we paid the price." Tears blurred my vision. "I didn't choose to live," I whispered. "I didn't want this." The mirror trembled, and the figures pressed closer. "You must make a choice," they said. "Stay with us, or return to the living." "But why?" I cried. "Why now?" Their eyes bore into mine. "The veil is thin," they murmured. "Tonight, the boundary between worlds fades. You can bridge the gap, Alex. Fulfill the pact." Pact? What pact? Desperation clawed at me. "What do I have to do?" "Bring us back," they said. "Open the door." I glanced at the curtain, its fabric frayed. Beyond lay darkness, an abyss that promised answers and oblivion. The figures waited, their longing palpable. I could feel their pain, their yearning for life. I stepped toward the curtain, my hand trembling. The whispers swirled, urging me on. Open the door, they chanted. Bring us home. And so, with a final breath, I pulled aside the curtain. The darkness swallowed me whole, and the chapel faded behind me. The figures followed, their hands outstretched. Together, we stepped into the void. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.